Every day, millions and millions of people go to work. And even though this activity is what takes most of our time, just few of us are really happy with what we are doing. You may wonder why it is so important to be happy. Isn't happiness something separated from work that needs to be achieved on a personal level? Yes, in part. But the point is that happier people tend to produce better results and be not only more productive, but also more innovative. And as we are going to see, the acceleration of change we are living in is demanding more and more of these happy workers that can see a purpose on every single thing that they are doing. How to achieve that? Well, during the last decades, we have seen many different management theories coming up and vanishing, and all of them have one common root: mass production. The similarities between these two pictures are not a coincidence. They are the result of a way of working that dramatically changed and shaped our world. Because if we want to understand Lean, we first need to understand that the way we work has an impact that goes far beyond the work itself. We all are younger than 200 years old, so for us, many things seem to be normal, as if they have been always there, like large factories, big cities, replacement of manual work, contamination, demographic explosion, shifts and schedules, schools, new social classes like proletariat and capitalist, or ideologies like capitalism and socialism and other theories. But none of these existed before 1800. It was with mass production that the jump has been enormous. If we have a look at our GDP per person across the time, our productivity has been almost flat since ancient times, and then it made an exponential jump around 1800. What happened? It was in 1776 that it was published The Wealth of Nations from Adam Smith, where the principles for the division of labor were introduced, and the famous example of the pin factory is presented with really impressive figures. A person could do in one day what an artisan or a craftsman would take a whole year. However, not everything goes always perfect. Poor commitment, demotivation, lack of alignment, and so on have severely interfered with a healthy and productive collaboration. We started producing tools and shaping stones about 2.5 million years ago. Since then, until just 200 years ago, we only worked as artisans. Mass production has changed the world. Since then, we think in terms of shift, schedules, constantly having a look at the time. We work with very well-defined roles, not only at work, but also in schools and other organizations. And from there, we take the principle that it's important to be always busy. We get used to see large inventories in the factories and always focusing in optimizing every single step. Intelligence. Don't think. Just do what you've been told to do, focus on your part of the work, and let the intelligence to be put on how to organize the whole thing and to split the work into small and simple steps. Defining, therefore, very precise and narrow responsibilities and making a quality check at the end. While this was taking place in the US, on the other side of the world, in Japan, the situation was quite different. The absence of raw materials made it impossible to work with the abundance of inventories typical of mass production. And since no single piece could be wasted, quality check needed to be introduced at every single step from the very beginning. To do so, any single operator could stop the whole production line in case of an error, and this is something completely unthinkable in Henry Ford's assembly line. But the differences go far beyond these simple things. Because mass production has changed the world, but lean production is changing it right now. Instead of shifts, schedules, and well-defined roles, we are moving into a universe of labor flexibility, where people have flexible working hours and also the roles are not so precisely defined. Instead of being always busy, the most important thing is just to focus on the bottlenecks and forget about large inventories or large backlogs of work to be done. It's important to do the things just in time. And optimizing single steps, every single thing, doesn't necessarily mean that you are optimizing the whole. And at the end of the day, this is what really matters. The intelligence is everywhere, so you try to empower the people to make decisions, and this can only be achieved based on transparency, so information should be available everywhere is needed. Forget about the precise and narrow responsibilities, they tend to be collective and the teams take them as a whole. So you empower the people, and autonomy, mastery, and purpose become the most important values for self-development as well as organizational ones. The quality check is everywhere. Quality can never be compromised if you pretend to work in this way. But even all this is still not enough. In the beginning of the 90s, Jim Womack, Daniel T. Jones, and Daniel Rose published the classic The Machine That Changed the World, where they made known all around the world the term lean, previously coined by John Krafcik on his article at the Sloan Management Review magazine, also from the MIT. The Machine That Changed the World presents a study that took 5 years and received $5 million from Western automakers. Why did car manufacturers give so much money for this study? Because already since the 70s they were suffering an unbeatable competition from Japan, and they were still unable to understand what was really going on. And this is where it becomes interesting. I personally remember a case that I read at that time in the 70s in the selections of the Reader's Digest that was about a US car company, probably Ford or General Motors, that couldn't beat the cost of a similar Japanese model. After reducing everything to a minimum, the Japanese were still selling the car at a price that was lower than their production costs, so it was impossible to compete like that. Therefore, they decided to purchase a Japanese car and reverse engineer it, and then found that many small and clever differences make the point. One of them was that while the American model was using something like 200 different screw types, the Japanese model was built with only about 20 of them. That is 10 times less complexity, inventory, switching tools in the assembly line, etc. Maybe the numbers were not exactly that, but the proportion was in this order. But wait, because this is where companies normally fail in the understanding of lean, because Americans wrongly thought that this reduction of the complexity was the secret of the Japanese production system. This is only a small part of it. Because the real point is that in the Japanese system, any worker can have a say if it produces value or reduces waste. The difference was not in the number of screw models, but in the possibility to incorporate improvements wherever they come from, even from the last worker in the assembly line. Yes, decisions are based on facts and not just on hierarchy. This superficial approach caused that during the last decades, many management ideas have been arriving with more promises than results. They deliver some benefits, this is true, but far from their promises. For instance, while in the Western countries typical hierarchies and command and control were the norm, Japanese organizations were much flatter. So once this was discovered, all Western companies started flattening their organigrams. The problem is that they were just copying practices without understanding the principles behind them. Yes, like cargo cult. If we think of lean as an iceberg, all these ideas that were coming have been just like sparks on the surface. Taking each of them separately is far from considering the whole. But still connecting the dots, we will be just on the top of the iceberg. Some of these ideas we have seen are, for example, the concepts of internal customer, flat organigrams, leadership instead of management, total quality management, labor flexibility, continuous improvement, knowledge management, and so on. So we have been taking only small pieces from the surface of a profound system that more than any practice is a whole way of working, thinking, and living. Indeed, if we want to define lean in profound terms, we may well say that this is an organizational system where each individual can release the full potential from within. This is a short intro of a 2 very intensive days course, so much more can be said. We did not go into different trends like lean manufacturing, lean software development, lean startup, or the real origins as they have been described by Taiichi Ohno. We could have also spoken about Scrum, a great gateway into this new world, compatible with many of these principles. The intention for now is to make clear that lean is not just another management hype, because division of labor can be a great thing if you are producing pins and each member in the organization can see the impact of the concrete labor in the final result. But for complex things, lean outperforms everything else we know until now. But not only this, lean releases us from the inherent contradictions of mass production. But here is a warning. Like waking up once you get into lean, you will start viewing waste everywhere. And this is because we are just a little part of what we can really be. In the future, no organization will survive if only a few of its members are allowed to think and make decisions. People won't have any limits more than those of their own talents and virtues. The better we understand Lean, the easier it will be to adapt and contribute in building it. Welcome to this new world. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.